Hi guys, it's Phoebe. Welcome back to my channel. I hope when you saw that I posted a new video, you wanted to see a video of me with no makeup on, with a messy bun, ready to just chat about the books that I read in February. February was a little bit of a weird reading month for me. I got off to a really slow start and felt behind my goal, and then I was reading really fast to try to catch up, and so I ended up not following my TBR from my last video because I was just reading books that I thought I could finish quickly, basically. So let's talk about books that I read in February. Let's start off with one book that wasn't on my TBR originally for this month, The Butterfly Garden by Dot Hutchison. Yeah. This book wasn't on my TBR and wasn't really on my radar that much. I ended up borrowing it from one of my friends from work. She recommended that I read it and lent it to me. And I'm really glad she doesn't know that I have this channel, so I can speak openly about how I felt about The Butterfly Garden. Overall, not a terrible book. The writing was fine. The characters and plot, everything was like kind of fine. It just wasn't my taste. And my issue with this book is that I feel like the author was trying too hard to make it like really dark and really edgy, and it ended up just being unbelievable. Basically, the like a general plot synopsis, no spoilers for the ending, for this book is that the FBI ends up finding this place that's basically a giant greenhouse, and it's full of these girls who have been kidnapped, and they have butterfly wings tattooed on their backs by the man who has captured them. And the book is, for the most part, an interview between an FBI agent and one of the girls from the garden trying to figure out what happened. Besides the idea of a man kidnapping girls and keeping them in a big greenhouse and tattooing their back with butterfly wings, like that whole thing just seems, again, over the top, dark and edgy. To me, doesn't seem super believable. The main character for this book, she gives them a fake name in the beginning, so I forget what her real name is, but the fake name that she has is Maya and then Anara. Did we ever figure out what her real name was? In any case, she also ends up giving the FBI agent the story of her life before she was kidnapped in the Butterfly Garden. And the author is trying really hard to make it seem like she had this really difficult life and was like always on her own. So like she's this really like dark, independent girl who has seen like the worst things that life has to offer. But again, it ends up being like over the top and unbelievable. Like her parents abandon her while she's on a carousel ride. Like they go to a theme park, and while she's on the carousel, both of her parents just walk away. And she like gets a ride home with like her pedophile neighbor. And then she goes to live with her aunt, who the house is just full of like taxidermied animals. Not her aunt, her grandma? Yeah, her grandma. And the house is like full of taxidermied animals. Like it's really weird and creepy. And then when she's 14, she runs away and like lives in this apartment building that's like a studio apartment in New York, but there's like 8 other girls who live there. And to me, it's like you could have done like 1 or 2 of those things, and I might have been like, yeah, okay, she had like a really dark, hard childhood. But like all of those things together, it was like, to me, it just wasn't believable. But if that doesn't scare you off, you might enjoy The Butterfly Garden. Again, I don't know if it was necessarily bad. I didn't enjoy it though myself. The one nonfiction book that I read in February was also a new release. I think it came out at the end of January though. It is Everybody Has a Podcast Except for You by the McElroy brothers. And I really actually liked this book. I read it because I have been kind of toying with the idea of a podcast for a few years now, and I saw that they were releasing it, and I don't actually even listen to any of their podcasts, but I've heard of them before because I do listen to a lot of podcasts, and I was like, well, that would be kind of an interesting resource, just so if that is something I end up pursuing, I kind of have an idea of what I'm getting into. And I will say that I'm really glad that I read this book because, again, I listened to a lot of podcasts and I felt like I knew kind of how to start a podcast, but this also taught me a lot about what you really need if you're going to seriously get into it. like different software and equipment and really good tips for your show itself. So I really enjoyed this book. I read it in a day. It's really short, really easy to get through, but also really informative if you're at all interested in starting a podcast, I feel like. Another book that I read in February was The Fellowship of the Ring, obviously by J.R.R. Tolkien. I had been wanting to do a read or a reread of The Lord of the Rings. I am pretty sure this is the only Lord of the Rings book that I've actually read myself. I don't think I ever got to reading The Two Towers and The Return of the King, so I'll be reading those next. I really enjoyed this book. I will also say I feel like there are some things in here that are kind of annoying. Like, for me personally, I don't like all of Tolkien's little poems that he throws in where like the hobbits are sitting around the campfire and he's like, oh, and now they are going to recite poetry. And then he spends like 3 pages like on this poem that the hobbits are reciting or whatever. And to me, that doesn't do anything for me. I don't feel like it moves the story along. That's kind of my biggest complaint of the book. I feel like just like some little things that I'm like, there was no reason for you to waste paper and ink on that. But overall, I mean, this is a classic. I absolutely adore this story. Had a really good time. Super excited to, keep reading this trilogy. Then I read 3 more like YA books in February. One was another new release. Actually, this might not be YA. This might be like new. No, it's probably YA. It is The Ruthless Lady's Guide to Wizardry by C.M. Wagoner. This book to me was honestly pretty disappointing. It was a new release that I got like as soon as it came out. I was really excited for it. The synopsis that I had been seeing online was that it was going to be about this girl who's like a petty thief, and she like answers a wanted ad to be a bodyguard. And the way the synopsis is written online and in other resources, to me it sounded like it was going to be what I suspected it was going to be. It was about her falling in love with the woman that it was the bodyguard for. And that ended up not being what happened. She did fall in love with a girl in this book. But it was one of the other bodyguards, and it ended up them being bodyguards for this person ended up not being a big part of the story at all. It was only like the first few chapters, and then they moved on from that. It was mostly about them kind of, and this book is set in like a Victorian England kind of universe, but it ended up being about this girl and the girl that she is like dating, infiltrating like the underbelly of like a new drug that's been like released on the streets that's causing a lot of problems because it's a drug. Anyway, I didn't really like it that much. I didn't like the writing. I didn't really like the characters. I feel like all of that, like, to me at that point, the plot didn't even matter. Like, a lot of things were happening. It was really action driven, like plot driven, but I didn't care because I couldn't get through the writing. Like, I just didn't like her style at all. Her voice, I didn't connect with the characters at all. They didn't feel real to me. So overall, this book was disappointing. I'm kind of sad that it was one that I was like looking forward to and bought and was just so let down. A book that I thought was going to let me down but didn't was A Map of Days by Ransom Riggs in the Miss Peregrine's Peculiar Children series. This is the 4th book in the series. The first one I really like. The second and third one I didn't like at all. This one, I actually had a really good time reading it. I think he really whipped it into shape for this one. It's about, I don't know if I've been doing good synopses of all of the books so far. So I will just say that this one I liked again, made me excited to read the 5th book, and I have ordered the 6th book. Have I gotten it already? No, I think I've already gotten it. It's literally on my shelf already. So excited to finish up this series and really happy that things took a turn for the better now that the last book is out. So I can just go ahead and close things out, and hopefully it's all uphill from here. The final book that I want to talk about having read in February was Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare, the first book in the Infernal Devices trilogy. And I really enjoyed this book, actually quite a bit. The Mortal Instruments series, I felt like the whole thing, I feel kind of lukewarm towards it. I kind of think that a reread might do me good for coming up with like a solid opinion on it. I didn't hate it, but I also didn't love it. There were some things that were really not great. But Clockwork Angel, again, really liked this one. In this book, I guess I'll do a synopsis of it. This book is about a girl named Tessa who goes to join her brother in Victorian England, and she ends up basically falling in with the shadow hunters at the institute there, and finds out that she's a shapeshifter, and basically gets like sucked into this whole new world and trying to figure out, because she always thought she was a human, and trying to figure out why she's a shapeshifter, like who her real family is, and also trying to find her brother, because when she gets to London, he is not there. She also, of course, like falls in love with one of the shadow hunters, and so that's kind of like a little YA type romance deal, which isn't super my thing, but I feel like it was a little bit more enjoyable for me to read about their relationship than it was for me to read about the relationships in the Mortal Instruments series. So I'm hoping that I like this one more, and after I finish this one, I'm thinking I will move on to the Dark Artifices trilogy, just because I'm enjoying this trilogy more than I enjoyed the original series, but we'll see how that goes. All right, so that is all the books that I read in February. Let's see what books I'm hoping to get to in March. All right, so I'm currently reading Krakatoa, The Day the World Exploded or something by Simon Winchester. It's a nonfiction book about the eruption of Krakatoa in 1882, I think, and that's going fine. I am also currently reading another book. It's in my work backpack, so I'm not going to grab it. But I'm still reading Written in My Own Heart's Blood by Diana Gabaldon, the 8th book in the Outlander series. I am slogging through it. I think it's better than the last few books have been, but it's still, to me, super boring. A book I'm hoping to get to in March would be Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. She also wrote An Enchantment of Ravens, which was another like YA fantasy book that I pretty well enjoyed. So I guess we'll see how this one goes. I feel like I've heard kind of mixed reviews about it. But in any case, I feel like those YA fantasy books are ones that I can eat up pretty quickly, which will be great because I'm trying to catch up on my reading goal. Then some books that I didn't get to in January like I planned to and will hope to catch up with will be Ken Follett's A Place Called Freedom and Entering Space, Creating a Spacefaring Civilization by Robert Sabrin. And then the new releases that I got in February and really hope to get to in March are Game Changer by Neil Shusterman. This is one where a boy who plays football gets a concussion and ends up like falling through 2 different alternate realities in the wake of his brain injury. Also, The Electric Kingdom, which is about a girl and her dog. I believe it's like in a world that's like post-apocalyptic after a really bad virus. And she goes into like a different dimension. The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. I'm so freaking excited for this book. I love Kristen Hanna. This is a book about a woman in the Great Depression living in Texas deciding whether or not she stays with her kind of messed up life in Texas during the Dust Bowl or if she moves on to California. And lastly, I have The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. This is a book about it's like a fantasy, I want to say West African based, where there's like this coming of age ceremony that the people have, and if you bleed, it's like good if you bleed normal red blood at the ceremony. It's bad if you bleed golden blood. You're like outcast. I think they're supposed to kill you or something. I don't know. I know it's really bad. So the main character obviously is gonna bleed gold at this ceremony, and she ends up being recruited to be part of this like army of girls who bled golden blood at the ceremony, hence the Gilded one. I'm super excited for those books that I will be picking up in March. Please tune in next month to see how I did. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!